Yo, this is Flip Gordon. You're listening to the Top Rope Nation podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah.
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
After a wild week of professional wrestling, I'd say a good week of pro wrestling, Kyle. This is Top Rope Nation, episode 71, coming off a very good edition of WWE SummerSlam on Sunday night, and two pretty good nights of television with Raw and SmackDown. I'm Ryan Drosty here to break down all the action, all the news with you this week. We've got a lot of topics to discuss in a brief broadcast tonight. The internet is up in arms over Becky Lynch. We're going to get to that right off the bat. Like I said, I'm joined here by Kyle Ross, Justin Joint at a out-of-town bachelor party. So I hope Justin is staying safe this weekend. He'll be back next week. So it's just me and Kyle. So Kyle, what's going on out there in Cleveland tonight?
Oh, not much. Just got the house to myself, ready to talk some pro graps, and I got some takes, baby. I'm bringing the downloads tonight. I shared with you just a portion of the notes I have taken for this here podcast, and I'm ready to rock and roll, man.
Oh yeah.
I got a lot to say about a lot of things.
For those of you who are watching this broadcast live, by the way, we are currently live on Patreon for our patrons only on YouTube. This is an exclusive video cast. Right as we went on the air, Kyle had a little fight with his dog in the room. We're getting ready to start the broadcast, and there was quite the incident. So that was just for our Patreon supporters. That'll be edited out of the audio broadcast. So if you're listening to this on iTunes, by the way, subscribe, leave us a rating. If you're listening on Stitcher, topropenation.com, you missed out on that. But if you want to join us every single week, you can get the live video cast over at patreon.com/topropenation. Support the show, help us keep this thing growing, and you get the show a day before everyone else. And like I said, that exclusive video broadcast, it is only for patrons. We do stream once a month our pay-per-view shows, and that goes out to the whole general public. But if you want to watch us live every single week, patreon.com/topropenation. Appreciate your support.
I'm sorry, man. I got to take if you're watching on the video, I can't keep up with these glasses, man. I just can't.
Kyle was wearing the old Eddie Gilbert sunglasses he used to break out back in the early days of Top Rope Nation. Yeah. One of the pairs. The American flag sunglasses were probably my favorite, Kyle. Rest in peace to those.
Yeah, was I with you when they broke? It was on WrestleMania weekend.
You were not with me, but you told me about it. I remember you telling me about it.
Okay. Well, I got a new pair, actually. My in-laws actually got me a new pair, which are even more obnoxious.
Got to break those out soon. All right, maybe next time we meet up for a Mania weekend, you can wear those all weekend long.
My God,
I'd appreciate it. So Becky Lynch.
Saying I'm ugly?
No.
Oh, okay. Good.
It's going to draw attention to us, man. And when we get the fans over there, we can tell them about the podcast.
Okay, good. All right, just making sure.
Got to play the game. Got to promote. Promoters.
It's all about the game and how you play it, baby.
That's right. So the game, speaking of the game and how you play it, this Becky Lynch heel turn. So we talked about it on our post show Sunday night after SummerSlam. Some people, like I mentioned on the show, some people I was talking with at the time were not sure that it was actually a heel turn, but they made it
those
clear
poor souls. Remember, imagine not agreeing with me and Ryan Drosty
on
the post show. I mean, did you listen to the commentary, folks? They made it pretty freaking clear who the heel was going to be.
Yeah, it was obvious, and they really hammered it home on Tuesday night. Becky trying to get the heat from the crowd, but she got massively cheered once again, as expected. And so this has been quite the topic in the world of wrestling with Becky Lynch, because her career has really been invigorated here in the last couple of months. I mean, she's been getting great reactions from the crowd, probably one of the most over baby faces in the women's division, right up there with Ronda Rousey. And
I wouldn't put her right up there. I think she's a step below. But
no, oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, as far as like one of the most over,
following
Ronda, she's right there. So
I think she's one of the best. I think she's been one of the best baby faces in the company for the last couple of years in terms of just what we think of as a traditional baby face.
Well, she has a legion of dedicated fans that have wanted to see her push for a long, long time. She's finally getting that push, but that's where the argument comes in, because she's getting pushed but not the way they'd like to see her be pushed. And they're going to rebel against this. And so we talked about it and how this is going to turn out with the Charlotte Flair feud, which, by the way, I got to point this out. I was listening to our Uncle Dave Meltzer on Observer Radio earlier today. Related. And I just thought that would be a good nickname for Dave, since we've been talking about him a lot in recent weeks. Dave was talking about how, if they go through with this feud like this, Charlotte Flair is going to become Roman Reigns. And all I could think of is 3 weeks ago on Top Rope Nation, ladies and gentlemen, our episode was titled Charlotte Flair is Roman Reigns. So we were once again, Kyle, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and to be fair, it was something that I had seen on Twitter. I didn't invent that. There are people ahead of the curve of even us on that subject, but
you're not supposed to tell them that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's pretty clear. I'm not going to talk about Becky much at all here in my opening rant. I'm going to talk more about Charlotte because I think she's the key here. And like we've been saying for the last 3 weeks, and has been made abundantly clear over the last week or so, she is now officially the Roman Reigns of the women's division. She's the chosen star. She's got the look and the lineage. And it doesn't matter if the crowd chooses to cheer Becky, relates more to Becky, or cheers or relates more to anyone else for that matter. WWE is going to be willing to fight the Bryan Alvarezes of the world, the quote-unquote hardcores, because they did with Roman. And yeah, I could be proven wrong. Maybe they, I hate the phrase read the tea leaves, but maybe they do get cold feet on this whole thing and they don't go. But Charlotte Flair is going to be positioned as the babyface star of the women's division, whether you like it or not. And I don't mean you, Ryan Drosty. I mean you, the listeners, you, the fans of the WWE. And I want to take this back a few months because when I was thinking about this a couple days ago, this hit me. When this was decided, it actually wasn't in the last week. It goes back to WrestleMania when she beat Asuka. We were all kind of like, oh, that was curious because she beat Asuka in the cleanest manner possible, where it left no intrigue for a rematch, and it clearly told the audience Charlotte Flair is the alpha female of this division, not Asuka. And I think it was Money in the Bank that, we had Bill Matz on, right, for that one, and it was the four of us with Justin.
It was Extreme Rules.
No, I think it was Money in the Bank. Because that was a good one.
I only know it was. Are you talking about the post show we did?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Extreme Rules because I was in that temporary house for Money in the Bank.
Okay. Yeah. My apologies. Regardless, but we talked about, you were the one who posed the question. What had done more feud or loss had done more damage to the Asuka character? Was it Charlotte at Mania or these series of Carmella losses, which were kind of like banana peel losses, for lack of a better term? And I think the other two both were kind of thought we were crazy when we said the Charlotte loss did. And I'm here to tell you right now on Thursday, August 23rd, that you and I were completely correct.
If you look at Asuka, you mean the Asuka loss?
Yeah, when Asuka lost to Charlotte.
Okay, yeah.
Asuka has no chance now because that was WWE in retrospect clearly stating Charlotte is head and shoulders above Asuka in this division.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize if that didn't come out right. So I that's where we say, you don't have to like it, and certainly a lot of people don't, but you need to understand it, that Charlotte is the star of the division. And here's the sobering thing that Becky Lynch fans need to realize. It actually doesn't matter who's the face and who's the heel in this feud. You know why? Because either way, Charlotte Flair's coming out on top because she's the star. Fine. If Becky's the babyface and Charlotte's the heel, okay, let's say you get what you want, Joe Blow wrestling fan. At the end of that feud, Charlotte Flair's the SmackDown Women's Champion.
It's true. This is actually an interesting debate because I think if you sit back and look at it with the Roman Reigns situation and then this one that involves two people, you got to think, is there any collateral damage? And so with Roman Reigns, they continue to push Roman Reigns because A, he sells a lot of merchandise. B, gets big reactions at every live event, arguably the biggest live reactions of anybody. But continuing to push Roman Reigns, he was feuding with multiple people. Did that actually hurt anybody? I don't know. Maybe there's a few people you can make the argument for, but with this feud, we're talking about two people involved. And so the question I would have for you, Kyle, is if they book it this way and Charlotte now, like as you said, does become the Roman Reigns type figure of the women's division, does that like handicap Charlotte too much moving forward? Like, is she in a way damaged? Because Charlotte gets big reactions too, but not like Reigns. I doubt she sells the merchandise that Reigns sells, anywhere close to that. So is there the justification of like ruining her potential as a babyface if the fans turn on her?
I don't think they care. I think they just view her as the star.
Yeah.
It's not like people like, oh, babyface heel, that they're so hung up on this. There's smart people in that room, contrary to the writers' room, contrary to what you may think. It's smart people are running the show in that room, okay? And they have to understand now what the deal is, just like they understood with Roman. And like I said before, they're willing to fight because, I mean, if you look at it, Charlotte, like I said, she's got the look. She's Ric Flair's daughter. They put her on all the shows. I remember, I think this might have been over a year ago. Linda and Stephanie were at some like Republican bigwig dinner or something. Obviously, it was, Linda's career affiliated. And you know who was with them? Charlotte. If that doesn't tell you right there, like what they think of Charlotte Flair, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Now, as far as comparing Charlotte to Roman Reigns, I actually do think Charlotte, if you compare the two in that role, if you're just going to look, hey, whether you love them or you hate them, it doesn't matter. They're the star of their respective divisions. Because to me, moving forward, I'm evaluating Charlotte solely on the Roman Reigns scale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the way to do it. And she does, I think, have some shortcomings. And to check this, I actually went back and I just watched a match that Roman had at SummerSlam 2014 against Randy Orton. It may be the only big singles match of Roman's career where you didn't get it was weird watching it. You didn't get the huge wave of boos when da-da, da-da, da-da hit. The Shield had just split. It was a match designed to kind of, get him towards the top of the card. And I think it worked pretty well. And if you look at Roman the first half of 2014, over in the Rumble, the one that Batista won, people loved the Shield. The Orton match was good and did what it was designed to do. It was really, and I've said this 72,000 times, let's make it 72,001. It was the Daniel Bryan comeback that happened at the same time. They wanted to just push him right on through as the top babyface. That screwed Roman Reigns and to this day haunts him. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe had they just pushed Daniel, if they had done Bryan Lesnar at WrestleMania 31 and done the same damn thing with Seth Rollins, I don't think we have these issues with Roman Reigns.
Yeah,
but that's a different story. Now, mm-hmm. I don't know if Charlotte has had that has been on that same trajectory to your point from earlier to justify this like Roman. I don't know that. I've defended Roman. I think Roman has good matches. Like you said, he always gets the biggest reactions. So it's up to Charlotte now. She's got to get the biggest reactions of anyone in the women's division. She's got to have good matches. Is she capable? Maybe. But if there's one thing that's clear, it's that Becky Lynch is Charlotte's Daniel Bryan in the sense that, and I think you were kind of hitting on this at the beginning of the conversation. The crowd was very much into the idea of Becky, after not being pushed for a long time, getting this one-on-one shot with Carmella. And I will say this, it did come across as pretty tone deaf from WWE to sort of shoehorn Charlotte into that situation. And right, wrong, or otherwise, the crowd saw that as, hey, you're taking away something we want, which is Becky Lynch getting a one-on-one title opportunity. And that is where this vitriol has come from, because the vitriol's pretty new. Charlotte, this was, we've been saying this for a couple weeks, but, Charlotte, there really hadn't been a backlash against her up until recently. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, I think her issue is the same that plagues Roman Reigns. It's the question of relatability. Compared to her peers, especially Becky, Charlotte's not that relatable. I mean, Roman comes out, looking like some like Adonis with Michael Cole yelling, "The big dog is here," and Charlotte, same thing. The queen is here. They both come out kind of like their shit don't stink sometimes. And it's not really relatable. I mean, you don't always have to. I mean, Braun Strowman isn't relatable. It's just that's a case, though. He's so freakishly strong that people are into him. Yeah. So it's not like relatability is the only factor in being an over babyface. But I do think that both Reigns and Charlotte have a relatability issue.
Oh, yeah. I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm going to play. I'm going to play contrarian on a few things though, because this is a good discussion. All right, so number one, I agree. Some very smart people in that WWE writing room. Hopefully, some of them are listening right now. But when it comes down to it, right, it all goes through Vince McMahon, and either Vince or a majority of the writers actually believed that a Becky Lynch heel turn would work, right?
Did they? Or like I wonder, it would be perplexing to me if someone didn't raise their hand and say, "Hey guys, the way we're booking this, Becky Lynch is going to get a face pop for this heel turn."
Yeah. Especially in New York. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one aspect. Okay. Another thing I thought of while you were talking, making some really good points there, is that with Roman, as far as like the face heel dynamic, we talked a lot about on the show, like with Roman, it really doesn't matter at this point if he's a face or heel. He's almost in that John Cena moment now where he gets big reactions. That's all that matters. Sells a lot of merch. He's the main guy. In this situation.
And people do. I know people that listen to podcasts, people that, think they know everything about wrestling, maybe don't get this. There are people that like Roman Reigns.
Oh yes, go to a live show and you will see
like kids and women like Roman Reigns. It's the non-podcast listening crowd that likes Roman Reigns. It doesn't. Yeah. And for the record, they're not any better or worse of fans than you are. Joe podcast listener.
Exactly. When it comes down to it, wrestling's about
a great person.
When it comes down to it, wrestling's about making money, and this guy makes the company a lot of money. So that's why he's pushed like he is. But the thing I was going to bring up on the creative end here is that with Roman, the big thing's always been, should they make him a heel and see what happens? And there's definitely a good argument that they should do that, especially at different times over the last couple of years. But that's all hypothetical, right? Like, will he just get cheered then? We've talked about that. With Charlotte, we know for a fact from her past that she is a far, far better heel.
I would agree with that.
Right. So that's the one thing to me that's kind of like hanging out there is.
Whereas Roman, when they started pushing Roman in 14 as a single, you're right. That's another difference with two. I don't think anyone in 2014 was saying, "Oh, Roman Reigns is a way better heel."
Right. Yeah. That's, and even if he ever turned, it's hypothetical, really. And with Charlotte, we know like she excels as a heel. Becky, great baby face. Then you got both of them there doing what they do best. Whereas here, it's still going to work out if they stay the course here. And honestly, television next week, I think is going to be really interesting because they could still pivot on this. But, obviously next week. By the way,
Becky could do a good job as a heel.
Yeah, I thought she's done a good job as far as, her mannerisms and everything and facial reactions, obviously. But they could still change course. But if they come out next week and Becky's still the heel, then clearly they're going to stay the course. And it'll still work. I think you're right. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to matter that much probably. But I just think creatively there's the argument that if Becky's the face, Charlotte's the heel, which we know they both excel in those roles, perhaps it could take it up a notch. I mean, overall, it's still gonna be a great feud. Their segment on Tuesday night was really good. So,
okay, let's talk history. Okay, I'm a big believer. I felt this way about Roman until I don't know. There became a point of no return, and you just really couldn't do it anymore. That if you really, really want to push a babyface and you're really getting some brushback from the fan base, that it's a prudent move to turn them heel in the short term let the crowd get the booing out of their system, and then you can always turn them back, kind of just like let the crowd then see that they're good. And then you just turn them back babyface for good.
Mm-hmm.
Exhibit A of that is The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he was brought in late 1996 and absolutely 172% stunk as the blue chipper babyface. They did not give up on him, to their credit. They turned him heel. He created the Rock persona. And as a result of that, when he turned back babyface in 1999, was far more over as a babyface than he ever would have been had they just kept him as the blue chipper.
Right.
So
he wasn't a very good talker. He went heel, became excellent on the microphone, and then
he became more comfortable, found himself. Yep. Now, to be fair, I don't know if a heel turn would have changed the Roman Reigns character that much, or even the Charlotte character that much, if they had her as a heel. But let's take a look at, that's just The Rock. That's just one example. And that's, during a period where the core audience certainly had a lot of say in the product, that, the Attitude Era. But let's look at the history of this promotion overall, not just one era. I wrote something in the notes, and I thought of this. I was telling you this off air. The Omnipotent babyface. Okay. And really, that's what they're doing with Charlotte and Roman. When people are like, how can they do this? I don't understand this. How do they think that people will like these people? Well, have you watched the history of the WWF, WWE? Because this goes certainly back to Hogan and maybe even Bruno. The WWE has always kind of been built on the idea of having this top babyface star who is always quote unquote right, regardless if a portion of the audience thinks they're right or not. Bruno, Hogan, Brett, Austin, Rock. There's a tweet to Meltzer that got me thinking about this. Somebody's like, I miss, because they were obviously in dirty diapers over the way the Becky heel turn played out. And the guy's like, Dave, I just miss the way heel turns used to be when they got heel reactions. And, I think that's a common sentiment from a lot of people. And Dave, Uncle Dave, had a great response. He's like, I think you'd be surprised a lot of these classic heel turns that you remember how they'd be received by today's audience. And Dave is absolutely right. So, I'm a little older than you, but you know all the classic Hogan angles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. If you go back objectively or with 2018 eyes, Hulk Hogan, the character, was a complete fucking asshole.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me I'm wrong here. The Paul Orndorff turn, the Randy Savage turn, would be wildly cheered by a 2018 audience.
Oh, especially
the Jealous Eyes promo. If you take Randy Savage doing the Jealous Eyes promo and put it in front of today's audience, I can't think of anything outside of the Minneapolis sports bars when the Vikings beat the Saints in the playoffs that would get a bigger and louder reaction.
That's true, man. Especially Randy Savage. I've went back and looked at that feud. I'm like, other than the physicality that Randy had with Liz, obviously, but as the feud played out, Hogan was the creepy friend, and he's totally the heel in that.
Yes, how many people in today's audience would relate to Randy Savage?
Oh yeah.
Especially because Savage is supposed to be and remember, what do people look for today? Savage was the better worker. He was the champion. It was his time. And here's Hogan aping all of his, time at the, he's posing with them and stuff. Here's a feud near and dear to your heart. Owen Hart, Bret Hart. The Owen Hart heel turn, Royal Rumble 94. What kind of reaction does that get in 2018?
They would just cheer it because of the shock factor, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Larry, going back even further, I'll go old school. I think Larry Zbyszko, when he turns on Bruno, that gets cheered today.
A lot of it is just a lot of the heel turns too. When you look at them logically, if this was real life, especially Owen Brett. So Owen beats Brett at Mania 10. Brett wins the title. He comes out pissed, right? Obviously he's pissed. He beat the guy. He has a point, right? He should be the champion.
Today, but
I think we watched this as kids at the time, and if we were watching as adults, we would have had a different reaction.
I don't know. You could kind of see those things. I just listened. Between the Sheets is one of my favorite podcasts, and they just played the Hogan narration of the Orndorff feud. And like, I remember like that was like one of the first feuds when I started watching wrestling. Mm-hmm. So like, obviously, yeah, with that, like, I didn't know, like, I just came in, oh, Hulk Hogan's the greatest. But like, it was like a couple of years later, I was still a kid. I'm like, Hulk Hogan was kind of a dick. He left Paul Orndorff high and dry, man. The phone call. Why did he pick up the phone? And the thing was, if you watch that episode of Championship Wrestling where Orndorff turns on him, there are people in the crowd cheering very clearly. Mm-hmm. But it's a small portion. The issue is there's the people more inclined to relate with the Paul Orndorffs, the Randy Savages, the Owen Harts, the Larry Zbyszkos. They make up a larger percentage of today's audience than they did, in 1989. Mm-hmm. That's the key, because the audience, I'll say they're a little smarter. I mean, you don't always get the best analysis, but, I think they could see through the booking. Mm-hmm. So, that's the thing. But the WWE has always kind of been built up, like when people, and Bryan Albert says, only the WWE would think Charlotte would get cheered in this. Well, look at how they've been booked, how they've booked their top stars all the time. Hogan, it didn't matter if Hogan was, if Joe Smart Mark thought he was wrong or out of line. Randy Savage turned on Hulk Hogan. And he was wrong for doing that. And I think that's kind of, it's not apples to apples, but I think that's kind of just how they view their top stars. This is the top star. When someone wrongs them, that person is wrong. And I think that, like, I was just reading, Brian James got into a Twitter spat with a group of people. I think Ryan Satin among them. That he's like, he told some fan, no, like Charlotte, was in the exact same position Becky was. And she won the title, and Becky was the one who got mad. He told this fan or whatever that, you're just mad because we're not telling the story you want to hear. And that wasn't a terrible point by Brian James. I thought that, like, because the guy's like, Charlotte only had to win one match to get it. That Becky's been doing this for years. And I'm like, oh my fucking Lord, this guy's a tool. Put me on the other side of this argument. So you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I just think that WWE in their eyes, like Hulk Hogan, like, I mean, he was wrong in the Randy Savage feud. Mm-hmm. He was wrong in the Paul Orndorff feud, but he's Hulk Hogan. And I think particularly with Vince, he's like, this is my star. My star's always right. So
in some ways, are you saying that there's still booking with like 80s mentality in a 2000s world?
I don't know, because even if you look at the 90s, like Austin and Rock, okay, the top, two of the top babyfaces, they were kind of assholes in that period. Like if you watch that too,
yeah.
It's just, I think that it's not a decade mentality. It's just the idea that this is our star, and you will, the star's always right. And Becky Lynch is just jealous.
Yeah.
You could accuse it of being tone deaf, and it's a debatable point, by the way. I talked about a big difference is today. The issue is, the people who can kind of see through some of this stuff make up a larger percentage of the audience. It is a debatable point whether WWE should cater to that crowd more or less.
Yeah, I was gonna raise that point because you mentioned the comment on Twitter about we're not telling the story that you want to see told. What do you think about the point that they should be telling the story that the audience is dictating based on their reactions?
Okay. The Exhibit A for the WWE side is ECW, a promotion that exclusively catered to what the people want and went out of business.
What about Austin?
I think Steve Austin had a broad appeal, clearly. Like, okay, maybe some people were ahead of the curve. And it was also that babyface turn came at a time when WWE had no choice but to cater to its core audience because it didn't have anything else. There was no casual audience. It had a core audience. Casual wrestling fans at that time, if they did exist, were watching WCW. So, that was that, again, I talked about with The Rock, how he was handled. That was a very unique period in time where WWE did very much cater to the whims of its core audience. I think they're thinking now, it's like, look, I have buddies who, like, they don't, friend of the show, Bryan, my buddy Bryan, he looks at Charlotte, he's like, oh, Charlotte's good. He makes comments that aren't related to her moveset, but, if you know what I mean, he does not. But I don't think like people like us, people that are online, like think this way about Charlotte, but I think there's also a portion of people that maybe just don't and are just kind of willing to accept, hey, Charlotte's a star.
Mm-hmm.
Can
you imagine that NWO storyline, like, which is one of the great heel reactions of all time when Hogan turned? Can you imagine that in 2018? And with, like, we had internet then, there was obviously the Observer was around and the Torch and everything, but wasn't as widespread as it is today. Can you imagine if, like, we had the internet infrastructure with wrestling news we have today, and you were hearing for months like, oh my God, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall are jumping ship, and then Hogan's character's been like so stagnant for 2 years, and then Hogan turns, like, that would have been completely cheered in 2018, I feel like, versus back then when it got such a like they were throwing garbage at him. It's one of the great heel reactions of all time. I think that would be completely 180 in 2018.
That's a very interesting case study, because the people that were booing, like, what, like Hogan always, like in these documentaries, like, Eric came up to me and had an idea. What if Hulk Hogan was a heel? I mean, Hulk, this guy, that's not the way it was. People forget, it was the hardcore audience of WCW that had been rejecting Hulk Hogan for 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they were then given, like, that was so unique. I feel that almost doesn't exist today, when they were very much given what they wanted, but they reacted accordingly. Like, this was like a group of people that grew up on Dusty, Magnum TA, Four Horsemen, Road Warriors, that did not want Hulk Hogan, resented what WCW became in the first 2 years of Hogan, and was then in this incredible moment given the opportunity to unload on him, after, probably not liking him and what he represented before he came to WCW. And then obviously certainly not being with the program in 1994-95. Like, that's a very unique turn for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. You're right. It probably would just be cheered today. But yeah, I mean, it was just so great back then, because it was actually very different. The people who would cheer that, the people who would cheer that today were the ones that were throwing the trash.
Oh yeah.
In the ring.
I feel just kind of like today, anything with any shock value, because a lot of what happens in wrestling now is just so predictable that anytime anything surprises you just a little bit, or it seems like something, it just automatically gets cheered like a massive
Meltzer
reaction.
made that point that, like, it's people don't cheer for baby faces and heels, that they cheer when something happens. It goes back to things like the comeback pop. Remember, like, when Triple H came back,
mm-hmm.
and Triple H had been the most dastardly heel in the promotion for 3 years. He comes back and is cheered wildly. Why? Because he hadn't been seen in 9 months.
Talking about like January 2002 at the Garden. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that was very, like, I remember, like, I got, I was like, this is odd. I felt like I was the only one bringing that point up. Like, I was like, well, this is odd. Like, we all just like Triple H. And granted, they were doing things to make you like them. They had, like, the U2 video. I always remember that Christian had. Oh, I bet you Triple H is in the back spinning U2 records or whatever. Didn't they always play Beautiful Day or something for them?
They had the, I was just going to mention my wife's favorite band. I'm being sarcastic. She hates them. Creed with the My Sacrifice video. Remember that?
That's what it was. Oh boy, that's not a good song.
But they just showed his rehab constantly that year.
Yeah, and they were getting him over as a babyface, but it was, so there was some manipulation there. But it was kind of odd that, like, that whole thing, like, oh, he hadn't done anything storyline wise to justify being a babyface, except just this emotional rehab.
Just rehabbing his
just rehabbing while listening to U2 and Creed. I mean, from where I come from, that don't make you a babyface.
Want to be a big time babyface, brother? Tear your quad.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think in the end, it's like, you got to make peace with this, Charlotte, Becky, to put a bow on it. Like, you can try to understand it and evaluate it that way. You can just, keep just doing what you're doing. Cheer Becky, go against Charlotte. I guess that's fine. But, I mean, if you're, like, going to get real mad about it, I mean, maybe just, and you really want change, don't watch. Like, that's the thing. Like, these people who are like, I'm going to go to SummerSlam and I'm going to sabotage this Roman Reigns match. Like, there's some, like, they're cool. You're not doing anything. If you want to actually change, you just don't buy the ticket.
Speaking of insufferable fans, by the way, have you seen the thing? Our buddy Derek, that was just on the podcast after SummerSlam, sent this to me. There's this group of people organizing, like bringing dozens of beach balls to All In. What a bunch of tools. Why would you do that?
I thought All In was the wrestling that you wanted. Like
I know. They're bringing all these beach balls. Like there's a whole Twitter account about it.
We talk about how we struggle sometimes to evaluate WWE in this modern era and how there's just a lot of different rules. And I think you really kind of have to not reteach, but just, kind of maybe come to grips and with what wrestling is in 2018. I struggle more evaluating these fans. And that's another exhibit why you don't chase these pops, because these people, they just change on a whim. And if you're turning people babyface and heel by the reaction of the present day, my God, are there going to be a lot of turns? Probably. That's another argument probably in WWE's favor. They're like, fuck it. People will get cheered, people will get booed, but God damn it, people, Charlotte Flair is going to be your star and you're going to like it.
A great example of that, and I wasn't planning on transitioning yet, but that is a perfect transition, is what happened with the Shield on Monday night. Because when Reigns came out at the top of the show, he got the big boos as usual, with some of the crowd cheering. And the crowd went crazy when Strowman came out to cash in at the end of the show after Roman wrestled Finn Balor, of course. But then when you heard the Shield theme come on and out comes Seth and Dean, what do you get? Massive pop too. And everyone popped for the Shield reunion to protect Roman from Braun, who they had just been cheering to cash in on Roman. But you add the other two to Roman, and now he's getting cheered.
Yeah, that's real good. And I want to get to that. I want to go through a few other things at SmackDown first. But with, I was very pleased to see this, and I'll go into greater detail in a few minutes about the position, that Roman was put in. It was really a relief to see him put in positions for him to succeed Monday night. So I think with Charlotte, I think the key is, and what WWE needs to realize real quick, because they've been through this with Roman, so it should help them, is they got to put Charlotte in positions to succeed. If she's going to be Roman Reigns, they got to put her in positions to succeed. What is Charlotte's shield? Is it her dad? I thought about this a little bit. Ric Flair, maybe not relatable. People love Ric Flair. Okay. By the way, if Jim Crockett Promotions was still running in 2018, we would not be having this discussion. Charlotte Flair would be an obvious choice to be the number one babyface in the company. Men or women, by the way. I mean, overall, number one babyface. What I might consider doing, if they're going to go this way with Charlotte and Becky, and it sure looks like they are, do a heavy heat angle where Becky Lynch beats the absolute dog shit out of Ric Flair in the Carolinas.
That would be pretty good. Yeah.
And it's like, and again, fantasy booking alert, send me $20 WWE if you use this.
Haven't heard that in a while. We used to use that phrase on the show a lot.
Becky kicks his ass. I mean, like heavy heat, just lays him out. He gets stretchered out. Looks like an old, like Ric Flair has never looked before, like an old, decrepit man. And Becky says, how ironic that the wheelin' dealin', kiss stealing guy got put to rest by a woman.
That's fantastic.
That's what I would do. And then like, I think people then could relate to Charlotte because everyone has fathers, obviously. And, Charlotte would become a sympathetic figure in that situation. That's just an idea I had. But you don't have to do that, but you do have to make sure she's in situations to succeed. And that can be done. And hopefully they've learned from their mistakes they made along the way with Roman.
So you mean there shouldn't be a person that Charlotte loses to constantly for several years?
No. Charlotte should not lose for a year and a half to Ronda Rousey before beating her in a manner where Ronda's protected. And by the way, that's another argument for Charlotte being Ronda Rousey. What's the final destination that we all think? She's going to beat the big MMA star. She's the one. Yeah. And so, and to be fair, if that's what they want to do, she should be a babyface when she does that.
Yeah. Yeah, fair point. Yeah, I think Charlotte's Shield group's probably on the other brand. It'd be Sasha and Bailey, the horsewomen.
One thing that I did see, and it's funny, I think I brought this up Sunday night the post show. The thing that I like the least actually about this heel turn is not really what becomes Becky. It's that I don't think we're ever going to get like, Dave had brought this up in the Observer 2 weeks ago that they were maybe planning horsewoman for Survivor Series. I don't know how you get back to that now.
No, it's going to be pretty hard to get to in 3 months.
Yeah. I mean, are they going to say you guys just have to team up? Like, I guess that could be an excuse for them to lose if Becky's not a team player. But I just, I really wanted to see it because I just think that's a big time money match.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Charlotte and Becky is something you could really do at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did you think of that Shield reunion on Monday night, Kyle?
Clever. Okay. So now that Roman's the champion, he's going to hold the title for a long time. I think we all know this. And people are going to figure that out. And you run the risk of kind of Raw maybe not being that intriguing when people know a guy is going to be champion for a long time. They're not going to take, contender of the month seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So the dynamic they have done here, where you have Braun, who is ready to cash in at any moment. He's not a coward, remember. He'll just tell you he's going to wrestle you after you're done wrestling. But you have the Shield, ready to kind of like always save Roman from the cash-in. Is very, again, there's not a traditional babyface in this situation. It's just two over entities, vying for the world title. And I think the whole thing with the specter of Braun cashing in anytime is going to make this run a lot more exciting than it would be otherwise. You and I have both questioned, does the Money in the Bank gimmick really fit Braun's character? This works the way and it's kind of unique.
Yeah, because he has to overcome 3 people, which makes it, without the Shield wrinkle, I still probably wouldn't like it, but I think the Shield thing is kind of saved the Braun Money in the Bank angle because, he has to beat 3 guys. He always I think both sides are protected because Roman, 2 people are coming to his aid all the time, but he's going up against the monster, right? Braun Strowman, and everyone pops for the Shield.
People just like the Shield.
People pop for the Shield. It's one of the great factions in WWE history. At the same time, it protects Braun because, he's not cashing in and winning the title, but he's also like getting jumped by 3 of the top guys in the company. So he's not getting a fair shake. So I like the dynamic quite a bit. I really like the reunion. I thought it worked well, and I think it keeps Braun interesting. And the title picture interesting for that matter.
Because really, I just don't think the audience is going to buy anyone else unseating Roman anytime soon. I really liked, I mentioned this earlier, the situations Roman was put into and how he was presented Monday night. I had some texts with my buddy before the show even got started. A fan of the show, Chad. And he was like, what do you think they're going to do with Roman tonight? I'm like, I can see him coming out and acting like this fighting champion, and he's going to bring up Finn Balor, how Finn never got his rematch for the Universal title, and lo and behold, that's what they did. My buddy texted me, he's like, my God, you were spot on. Like, I can show you the text right now. I scroll through. But that was smart, and it was smart how, Corbin comes out and Roman puts over Finn, what he did to him. Like, this is what they should have been doing with Roman all along. Whether you like Roman Reigns, they made it very hard to boo Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
On Monday night,
Agreed.
Which is what they needed to be doing. They for too long have been putting him in positions where very easy for the crowd to boo him. And it was good. And it was everything that was right about Roman. He had a good match. He was with the Shield. I mean, that's Roman. That's the Roman Reigns that, if you want him to be a big star, that you need to see good matches hanging out with the Shield. Mm-hmm. People are gonna be less inclined to boo him if that's. I mean, he'll always be booed by a portion of the audience, but he's less likely that way. I think the interesting question is what they do for Hell in a Cell now. There is an argument that they could do Roman and Strowman in a cell match, but I feel, because storyline wise it would make sense. It keeps the Shield out. But I feel it's too early to go to that because you're sort of like, the whole thing is you want to drag this out over a long period of time. And if you just go to that, in a couple weeks, then what are you doing the rest of the year on Raw if you've already kind of done? And, you can't. I hate the idea of Braun challenging, but still having the briefcase like as a backup.
Yeah.
Like if you have the briefcase, you shouldn't be getting. They've done this before. I feel like I can't remember who it was, but like if you have the briefcase, you should not be getting an additional title shot.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking 6-man, maybe like Braun and friends. I don't know who, I think Lashley sent out a kind of a kayfabe tweet, I got you or something. Like it was something like that.
Yeah.
I could see him on a team with Braun and somebody else against the Shield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus, I feel like AJ Joe is going to be a cell match.
Yeah. That's what I had up above in my notes. AJ and Joe. If you want to go back to SmackDown, it would seem logical that they get the cell.
Mm-hmm.
The only other option I could think of was Roman and Strowman. Although last year they did multiple cell matches.
Yeah.
I don't like that though.
Would they do multiple world title or universal? Sorry, but top 2 titles, both of them in the cell. I don't know if they do that.
It would be odd if they didn't do AJ and Joe. I mean, see, what's funny is, and this is, everyone's talked about this since they made Hell in a Cell a pay-per-view where the match just happened. By God, it's September, and that means it's time for Hell in a Cell, not a certain moment in a feud dictates you bringing the Hell in a Cell gimmick, which is when that work, which to me is a better idea. Roman and Braun, the idea of building to that, where it's like, okay, it's come to this, and Braun, he comes out and says, I'm going to cash in my briefcase at this next pay-per-view, and it's going to be Hell in a Cell, so the Shield can't interfere. That's actually good storytelling. But like I said, I think it's, you can't do that now because I don't know what you do then after.
Right.
And so I think the whole, it's September and you need somebody to do it, I think that fits AJ Joe more.
Mm-hmm. I did want to say too, for anyone that doesn't think Roman can work, watch that match from Monday night with Finn Balor. It was a fantastic television match.
The only person who can throw a worked punch as good as Roman Reigns is Brie Bella, who may have actually shoot punches.
I was just going to say, she's probably connecting half the time.
Dude, I mean, like, did you see that? That was one of the great punches in the history of this industry.
Brie Bella, who would have thought?
I mean, did she potato him?
Yeah, I think so. Don't you think he probably told her, like, go ahead and hit me, make it look good.
Hey, we talked about it on the post show for SummerSlam. They worked a very Memphis-style match, Bryan and Miz, and this is kind of a very Memphis-style feud overall. And, oh, by the way, a story that is not getting nearly enough pub over the last 40 hours is Daniel Bryan's clearly re-signed with the WWE.
Because of his advertised matches?
Yeah, I mean, they're not, okay, yeah, anything can happen. They're not booking this mixed tag for Hell in a Cell and this one-on-one match at the Australia show where the winner, I guess, is the new number one contender.
Mm-hmm.
If Daniel Bryan hasn't re-signed. So he's re-signed.
I think so. Or he's at least agreed verbally.
I mean, they're not. That would be, look, I kind of explained the Charlotte thing from WWE's perspective, even though maybe I don't agree with it. I mean, that would be, if he hasn't re-signed, that's insanity.
Or they're at least pretty confident from their conversations he's going to, and his lawyers.
And he said it too. He said he's not. I mean, maybe the deal isn't, we got what, a week still till September 1st. I mean, they might still be working out some of the particulars, but it's they obviously have some sort of agreement in place because you're not setting those matches if he's not staying.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I was going to also mention too in that match on Monday with Finn and Roman. One of the things I really noticed during the match that I liked a lot, and this is just like a small thing, but it bugs me with a lot of guys and ladies in the ring, is that neither of the guys, when the ref counted, especially all the near falls they did in that match, neither of them stared down the referee. Don't you hate that in a wrestling match?
Yes, that's a problem. It is very obvious sometimes when a guy's going to kick out because you can see them looking at the referee. Yes.
Yeah, both of them on Monday, if you go back and watch the match, they both kicked out based on the cadence of the count. Neither of them were looking at the referee. And to me, I love that kind of thing when they can actually not stare.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
Dolph Ziggler's the stare.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I noticed that right away on Monday. It was just, it really stood out to me a lot.
Yeah, it was a really good match. And you could argue, should Finn have got it? I thought maybe Finn would be a pay-per-view opponent, but I don't know. From their perspective, when they've got this idea with Braun and they've reformed the Shield, I think Finn's just a TV opponent.
It was a perfect match to do with the hardcores there, SummerSlam.
And for all the people who want to poo-poo what they've done with Finn, guy main events is in a lot of TV main events. He could be doing a lot worse. He could be Ty Dillinger.
Yeah. Well, I am all in, so to speak, for a Seth Rollins Finn Balor IC title feud. Whenever that could happen, would be great.
Yeah. So. I thought SmackDown had far more newsworthy things than Raw this week. I want to go back to SmackDown, if you will.
Okay, go ahead.
The Charlotte Becky thing has been the dominant topic on Twitter.com, obviously. Daniel Bryan has re-signed, apparently. And we have new tag champs, the New Day. Kind of auspicious circumstances, though. I know, anyone who's listened to this show knows I've been pretty critical of the Bludgeon Brothers as tag team champions. You'd like to think and hope that this switch was something planned and not just dictated by injury.
Poor Luke Harper. Like, what's he gonna do for the next?
That is a question in my notes. Where does this leave Harper? Because I'll get to this in a moment. It's the babyface side they're short on SmackDown, not the heel side. And I don't really know where Luke Harper fits in. And that's too bad. And Eric Rowan, who's a guy I've been too critical of in the past, deserves a shit ton of credit for going out there and working a match.
Oh, yeah.
Despite being clearly injured.
I'm almost certain, though, that this title change came because of the injury, don't you think? Otherwise, they would have done it at SummerSlam, I feel like.
I feel that maybe they thought that it would get lost in the shuffle at SummerSlam and they wanted to do it because let's look at it. They did a DQ finish. So they obviously were doing a rematch regardless.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if maybe they were going to do it at Hell in a Cell or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they were going to do it Tuesday night initially. That probably was dictated by injury.
Yeah.
Because they had the title off them. But, New Day, great tag team. Maybe the best in the company history.
I'm looking at the show notes here, Kyle. I'm going to have to throw this out here. Peyton Royce. And Push.
How coincidental is that?
Peyton Royce getting the big victory over Naomi. Do you think that is timely?
Yeah.
It says it all right there.
I mean, look, maybe I'm being cynical, but were the Iconics really getting pushed 2 weeks ago?
I mean, come on. Their call-up was not going over well. Unfortunately, because I like them both. But
yeah, Peyton in particular. I mean, look, I think they should be pushed as a new act. Okay, but somebody tweeted, "I'm all here for the Meltzer spiting Peyton Royce push."
I think it's pretty clear. It should be.
Should the Iconics cut a Hulk Hogan World War III 95
Burn the Observer live on the air?
This is what we call a rag sheet, sister.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I would laugh quite hard. And to be fair, Meltzer always said he laughed at that pay-per-view. Can you imagine if you're Dave Meltzer watching that pay-per-view in 95?
Can you imagine if they burned a Top Rope Nation shirt live on the air?
Well, that would be extreme heel heat.
This Kyle Ross asshole.
Yeah. I don't think the company's going to do it. Hell, I just try to make sense of their Charlotte push. I'm the last guy they should be mad at.
No, they should be signing you. Put you in the writer's room, Kyle.
Yeah. You mentioned Luke Harper. Where does this leave him? And there's a note here that does not have me exactly jumping for joy at his prospects, and that's with Almas. So I don't know if you saw this note. I can't remember where I saw it, but after the pre-show, when Almas and Vega went over, there was like this note, Almas in line for big push. And I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But then I'm thinking, doing what? And I love Andrade Cien Almas, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at SmackDown, okay, their two top babyfaces are obviously AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, and Jeff Hardy's the third. Who's number 4?
The
He
New
is there
Day as a
number.
group.
I mean, I guess it's Rusev, actually. It's Rusev. And that's who Almas was feuding with. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, that's great. Because the reason I bring this up is because it was a little bit eye-rolling. They did the 50-50 thing with Rusev getting the win on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
They basically just did with Rusev Day, they did the match over. But I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, people are saying, oh, we hate 50-50. But what else where does Almas go if he pivots away from Rusev? Like, what do you have to do? Like, and that's the problem with, when you have a brand split, sometimes there's just not enough options. And I guess, I mean, do I think Almas eventually wins this feud? Yes, I do. But I just think, all right, he won once, that feud's over, onward and upward for Andrade Cien Almas. To what? I just don't think they, and that's the issue with, the low light of SmackDown was, the United States of Nakamura or Knock America or whatever that was. I mean, does that last longer than Mex America? That was bad. But it's the same thing with like Hardy, Orton, and Nakamura all being tied together.
Yeah.
What do they do otherwise? Because you've got the top four right now, AJ and Joe, Bryan and Miz tied up. There's just not a lot of other options for these guys except to just kind of feud in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could see Almas working a feud with like a Jeff Hardy out of that group, but
yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this: Rey Mysterio can't get here soon enough.
Yeah,
I think Rey has always kind of been. This is weird, but like he's been like a SmackDown guy. I think. Mm-hmm. So I when Rey, who is rumored to be, it's no secret, is probably coming in pretty soon. I think he needs to be on SmackDown because they just need more. They desperately need more baby faces.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think next month. That was last I heard, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there you go. I mean, you stretch this Rusev Almas thing out another month, and then, I think Almas Ray makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else from Raw and SmackDown you want to hit before we take it home, Kyle?
A
couple other items we had here about Corbin and Ambrose.
The Ronda Steph angle. Leading to Kurt Angle getting the quote vacation. People are like, oh, what's this all about? And I guess the rumor is that Kurt's training for a full-time return.
Mm-hmm. I saw that too. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if I want to see Kurt wrestle full-time yet.
No.
Whatever. But you're going to have Corbin as the old heel authority figure. And people maybe roll their eyes at that, but it kind of makes sense because you have a lot of babyface champions now on Raw. And so I assume that this is going to kind of set the stage for Hell in a Cell booking with Corbin. I thought maybe Rousey was going to sit out the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but I would assume they're doing a rematch with her and Alexa based on, Alexa was very much shoehorned into that whole thing. Like she was standing there when the suspension was announced.
Yeah.
So I can see that. And, it's funny. We talk about these baby faces being put in good positions or not being put in good positions. What makes it frustrating with either Roman or Charlotte is how smart they are with Rousey.
That's true. Booked perfectly so far.
Her promo was just another piece of clever booking. It makes her come across as likable when they just, even if it's like not something she would normally do, just having her say something like, oh, she just talks individually to all the other fellow baby faces. In the women's division. Oh, Sasha Bailey, I couldn't be up here if it wasn't for that great match you guys had 3 years ago. That endears her to the people that could potentially reject her.
Yeah.
That's just clever booking. That's someone thinking.
Mm-hmm. Caters to the smarks.
Yeah, which you shouldn't always do, but I think it's if you're going to be fighting these fan reactions, do it smart.
Yeah.
Don't be stubborn.
Yeah.
And Ambrose, what did you think of him? Kind of wrestled a little differently, and I think I liked it. No bounce back clothesline.
Oh God, I hated that. I hated that.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I am glad he's dropped that so far. No, I think everything about him is more believable, and it's all a preview of the heel Ambrose we're about to get. I think.
Well,
more serious.
I don't think we're getting it for a while.
Well, you're right.
Now with the Shield reformed, Justin was the one. I think it was on the preview show who brought this up that if you don't turn them right away, you got to shelve that thing for a few months. And I think clearly Monday's an indication that they're shelving it for a few months. There will be no imminent heel turn from DA.
I would go back actually to an earlier discussion we had with the Brett Owen feud, which basically began in a big way at Survivor Series 93. I take the Shield thing up to the Survivor Series, have them in a match, and have Ambrose turn in a Survivor Series match.
Wow.
Be a good setting.
Okay. Might be too early. I don't know. We'll see. Well, I think they need to keep going here.
More than 3 months.
Yeah, we'll let it play. I guess it's one of those things that, okay, if the Shield act is getting stale, I think once you do it, once the Shield Braun thing is done.
Yeah, I think.
However,
bare minimum, you take it through Survivor Series, and it just seems like with the team aspect of that event, it would be a good opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. NXT tape. The last thing I think we should end on is NXT tapings. I think just wrapped up a little bit ago.
I've not seen anything.
Okay. If people don't like spoilers,
turn it off right now if you don't want to hear spoilers, people.
The three big things were, what I see on my timeline is, man, do people not like this Johnny Gargano booking? They're making him like this hard to root for babyface. Our good friend Liam O'Rourke brought this up after TakeOver, that WWE sometimes just doesn't seem to know how to book babyfaces. I feel that's the theme of the show.
Mm-hmm.
They're making Gargano unlikable. And they're not doing a heel turn. I'm convinced that they're going back to the thing they did last year where he needs to go back to being Johnny freaking wrestling as he was doing. But people are chanting Johnny failure at him reportedly tonight at the tapings.
Oh, God.
Like Velveteen Dream, there's a segment where he calls him Johnny failure and the crowd picked up on. That's not good.
No.
In my, because, he's not going to be the assailant of Aleister Black. That's too obvious. That's something you give to a new person, I think.
Yeah.
Or someone who's fleeting. Johnny Gargano should not be that person.
This comes back to a point I made on the SummerSlam post show and when we started talking about TakeOver, and I mentioned, I think the big scare here is that you wait too long to put the belt on Gargano, and maybe they already have then, judging by the taping, because I always go back to that. I know I mentioned it Sunday night, the mid-2000s Samoa Joe and TNA, when they waited way too long, and Gargano probably should have won the title by now, looking back.
So, we talked about that. I raised a lot of flags that the way that Gargano Ciampa match was worked in New Orleans, and that there's kind of been a law of diminishing returns since then. Maybe that should have just been one and done, and they should have just had Johnny chase all this. I said it. The only other, as much as people like that feud, but the only other stuff that was kind of there. On a positive note, my timeline was very excited. It seemed very much that they're teasing a potential Cassius Ono Matt Riddle feud. Ono kind of teased a heel turn where he said he's kind of sick of being a stepping stone, and whoever the next guy who walks into this place with all this buzz is, he's going after him. People who followed these guys know these guys had some real bangers a couple of years ago in Evolve, so that would be a hell of a match to do, and I think it would be a great first TakeOver match, perhaps, for Matt Riddle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. And then they've continued Ricochet feuding with Undisputed Era. There was a couple, they started out with a tag match. Ricochet and Pete Dunne teamed up against, it was Cole and O'Reilly, I think. Or Cole and Strong. It wasn't O'Reilly and Strong. It was not a tag title match. It was Cole and either O'Reilly or Strong, I know. And Undisputed won. Hopefully you've turned off by now. But it then built at the end of the last match of the tapings was a winner-take-all North American title versus UK title. Ricochet and Pete Dunne. And I'm like, really? They're going to have one guy hold the titles? And guess what? Schmoz finish. Yeah, Schmoz finish. Sorry. And Keith Lee got involved in this post-match I'm reading. Danny Burch, Oney Lorcan. So there's a lot of things, I think, if you're looking at the next TakeOver and War Games, they got a lot of guys, that they're kind of injecting into that feud against Undisputed Era.
Mm-hmm.
So
nice.
Yeah, so that is it. It didn't seem like they didn't have a ton of hints for TakeOver.
Yeah.
But obviously it's still early. I mean, the last one just ended.
Yeah, what are they doing? 3 weeks of TV tapings?
3 or 4. I can't remember. I think it's 3. So yeah. So obviously, we're going to still have 2 months after this. So we shall see.
All right, Kyle. Well, good discussion tonight. I really enjoyed the Charlotte Becky back and forth.
I thought about this too long. Hopefully I did it. I had a lot to get out there. I wasn't even doing my own work on Wednesday morning. I was feverishly taking notes as I thought about it because it was inescapable, all this discussion on my Twitter feed. People were going crazy. And I'm like, all right, let me think about this.
Definitely been the hot topic this week. So very timely. So another thing, as far as the topic goes, those of you that are supporting us on Patreon, which again, we thank you, throw out a suggestion to us either on Twitter, on the Patreon message board. Let us know what's the next show you want to see us review on Top Rope Nation Classics. It'll be the 3rd edition. That's exclusively for Patreon supporters. Anything from the past, throw some ideas out there. We'll put a poll up on Twitter. I'll have another one of those coming your way very soon.
Do I get to vote? Because I actually was going to privately share with you an idea I had.
Oh, you do?
That would be timely.
Okay, tell me off.
I could. Oh, okay. I was gonna say I could say it right now, but then if people like it, we're gonna be forced to do it. I think it's a logical choice.
Okay, throw it to me off air, and then after we get some suggestions from our patrons, I'll see if any of them mention it. But I'll definitely include it in the poll, Kyle, or we could do both of them. So I did mention at the top of the show, Justin is gone this week. Hopefully, I believe he'll be ready to record episode 72 next week. Kyle is going to have a busy week next week, but hopefully we can persuade him to join us. If not, it'll be just myself and Justin with episode 72 next Thursday. So if you want to join us live like we've been live tonight on YouTube for Patreon supporters, patreon.com/TopRopeNation. And of course, as always, subscribe, rate us on YouTube. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes and wherever podcasts are found. So with that, I am Ryan Droste. You can find me at Historical Ryan. He is Kyle Ross at TRP Kyle, and we are at Top Rope Nation.